Why, in the face of all that, did you not act to contain abusive, deceptive subprime lending? My view is, and I want to move on to another issue, is you could have, you should have, and you didn't.
Former Fed Chairman Alan Greenspan in the hot seat on Capitol Hill today as this commission tries to figure out what went wrong with the economy and how to prevent it going forward.
When the highlight of the day is Alan Greenspan, it feels like 1999. Top Line starts right now.
Hello and welcome to ABCNews.com's Top Line. I'm David Chalian.
And I'm Rick Klein.
Each weekday we're bringing you the very latest political headlines, reporting, insight, analysis, everything you need and want to know about politics.
And it's twitter.com/The Note where we're in touch all day long.
Get us started, sir. What's your top line today?
Checkmate. President Obama heads to the Czech Republic tonight to sign the START II treaty with Russia, and we are seeing a major administration push around nuclear policy, and I actually think it's broader than just nukes. David, you can see big hints about where the president wants to go in terms of foreign policy. The fact that he's chosen this issue area to really stake a claim and put out some new ground. This isn't something that's really high on people's priority lists on a day-to-day basis. This is an area, though, that he cares about very deeply, and we're seeing some interesting tidbits emerge.
Again, when he got his Foreign Relations Committee slot in the Senate as a young senator, this is an issue he delved into, and there was no doubt, if you listen to him on the campaign trail as well, that this is where a big chunk of his foreign policy vision was going to be spent. Salt in the wound. Yes, the RNC announces it raised $11.4 million in March. That's a big haul for them. They announced this to try to quell that talk about a committee being in turmoil. Problem is, the DNC came out a few moments later and said, yeah, well, we raised a couple more million than that. As the RNC attempted to sort of win the day here, they were immediately quashed from doing so.
And interestingly, both sides say healthcare is to blame for the big hauls. Democrats happy about their numbers. They're saying it's going to be a larger number, although we haven't seen the breakdown yet. Saying this shows that there's more people who like the bill than who don't like it. And I think it's been one of the storylines so far of this recess is that there hasn't been as much of a backlash. And in some cases, Democrats able to raise a little money.
And we certainly saw with some new poll numbers today from Gallup, the enthused base, both the Democratic base and the Republican base, on the healthcare issue. So that makes sense that it contributes to these fundraising numbers.
Looking back, as we mentioned at the top of the show, it's the Financial Crisis Inquiry Commission. It has gotten underway on Capitol Hill with their star witness, Alan Greenspan. This, by definition, is looking back at the root causes of what happened with the financial meltdown, but it is going to feed directly into the debate over what to do next, because financial regulatory reform is probably the biggest issue on the domestic agenda for Congress when they get back next week, getting final action on that. And there's some big questions that still have to get answered about what that's going to look like. These hearings, I think, are going to have an impact, kind of a spillover effect into that.
The White House wants to see this issue dealt with by the Memorial Day recess. That may be too short of a time frame for Congress to deal with, but clearly this backward look is going to tee up what is going to dominate most of the political oxygen. And finally, dynamic duo. Yes, Minnesota is the place to be this week if you are interested in politics. Today you have Michelle Bachmann and Sarah Palin sharing a stage. Tim Pawlenty will be there too. Nobody will be paying much attention to him, I'm sure. These two darlings of the conservative Tea Party grassroots movement in that conservative wing of the Republican Party, superstars that they are, will be on display today. And then later in this week on Friday, you will see Pawlenty and Romney share a stage together in Minnesota, representing more the Republican establishment wing. And that is the debate inside the Republican Party about who steps up to lead it forward.
And interestingly, Pawlenty showing up at both of them. He will be on stage with both of them.
It is his own state. He is the governor.
I'm guessing, though, that today's is going to get a little more attention. Although on Friday, we're seeing probably the two leading contenders for the presidency in 2012. I think today is going to get a little bit more of people watching.
Indeed. We're going to begin with a discussion about the financial crisis and regulatory reform going forward. We're joined in Atlanta today by Sam Zamarripa. He's the chairman of the Stop Too Big to Fail Coalition and the president of Zamarripa Capital Incorporated. Sam, thank you for being with us. I do want to get your take. I know you wrote in Politico in an op-ed yesterday your take on Dodd's bill, the financial regulatory reform bill on the Senate side, and you said you don't see how that bill ends too big to fail. He disagrees with you. Is there nothing in there that you see would actually halt that too big to fail concept?
Listen, thanks for having me. My view has been from day one, looking at the original Barney Frank bill and now Senator Dodd's bill, that there are some good aspects of the bill, but in general, these are tactical bills. These are bills that are designed to remedy something that's wrong in the banking sector or something that's wrong in the regulatory sector. without any systemic or larger scale reform of the entire sector. And so, you know, it's a little bit like treating termites with a shovel. It's the systemic nature of the too big to fail problem is bigger than just regulatory reform. It has to look at the very size of banks themselves. So while I respect what the senator has done, I think, to your point, there's a lot more questions need to be asked, not only of what happened, but what's going to happen.
What is the biggest thing that can be done legislatively to stop this? We've had a lot of debate about whether there's such a thing as too big to fail and whether that it helps or hurts the concept of that. But what should Congress be doing as part of financial regulatory reform?
Well, the first part of that is that we have to sort of dissect this concept of too big to fail and kind of come to terms with the fact that in the United States, under our brand of capitalism, we really should never accept the idea that there is a company that's too big to fail. Failure is a part of the business cycle. You start things, they grow, and they fail. If we ever get in the business where government is essentially saying, look, there are certain things that are just so important to us that we're going to underwrite them even if they don't perform, isn't that really like Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac? Isn't that a government service enterprise?
But that's not, I mean, the government doesn't go into it with a policy like that. What can they do to prevent that on the back end?
You know, Rick or Dave, they actually do if we institutionalize the current reform, because all we're doing is essentially saying that the current structure is acceptable to us as long as we can regulate it a little bit more or tweak the current system. And we would argue at Stop Too Big to Fail that that's not accurate.
You say
we think size is a threat.
Sam,
we believe that size is a threat.
You say that the government is going into this idea ready to bail them out. I think that Chairman Dodd would say they're setting up an industry fund, an industry paid-for fund, not a government fund, to have there as a fail-safe going forward. Is that something you could get behind?
Let's make it really simple. They're essentially setting up an insurance policy, right? And the insurance policy is designed to pay if something goes wrong. So in essence, the people that are running the banks know this, and they're going to be able to then take increasingly larger and larger risks because they really never will fail because that insurance policy will kick in. So in my view, in the view of Stop Too Big to Fail, we are institutionalizing the system. So I respectfully disagree with Senator Dodd. I don't think we should be institutionalizing the banks that are too big to fail. I think we should be asking questions like, well, why do we allow banks to exist at a certain size? That's where I would begin.
How important to you as a goal in this is bipartisanship, or should Democrats just take the ball on this and run on their own?
You know, guys, this is a fascinating question because there's plenty of ideological or experiential information on both sides of the aisle to go after this. You know, the Democrats have put a lot of emphasis in consumer reform, and again, while I respect consumer reform, to me that's just a tactical side of this issue. On the Republican side, I think we need to hear a lot more about the benefits of capitalism and the free market and the willingness to let certain businesses fail. So I think you can put these things together. But in essence, in our view, this bill is moving a little too fast. We think there needs to be a lot more questions asked about what the requirements of a modern economy are going forward. And then certainly we need to ask, who's going to pay for this insurance policy? You know, our group is made up of individual investors, people that have retirement accounts, small financial companies, and we believe that any assignment of the risk to taxpayers is really irresponsible on the part of Congress. We do not believe that you and I, taxpayers, should be paying for any failure, frankly, in any business, especially the big banks.
Sam Zamarripa, thank you very much for being with us today. We appreciate your insight.
Thanks for having me.
Sure.